Thank you to today's show sponsor, Azalea Orthopedics. They are a group of highly trained physicians and surgeons in East Texas that will meet all of your orthopedic needs. To learn more about Azalea Orthopedics, go to azaleaortho.com. That is azaleaortho.com. Welcome to Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. I am Dr. Grace English, founder of Deep in the Heart Ministries. We are a ministry that exists to tackle the hard realities of this life through the power of Jesus Christ. He is the only one that can set us free from our addictions, our negative thoughts and emotions, and bring us the true lasting healing and peace that He wants for our lives. Welcome, friends, to this episode of Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. Today's topic is going to be about overcoming adversity and hardships and finding God. I have a very special guest today, Sasha Vukelja, who many of you I know of her and probably know who she is. Sasha is one of those larger-than-life people that you can't miss when you're near her, and she and Larry, from what I remember, y'all came to Tyler in the 90s, and she is a rewired oncologist, but she's retired from oncology, but she's doing a bunch of other stuff right now. But Sasha has been in Tyler, and John and I have known her and Larry because they also go to our church as well. And so today I want to have Sasha share with you the story that she went through as a young child, teenager, adult, and how she came to the United States. And literally, she just had one sack of belongings, did not know how to speak English. She came with her mother, Katerina Maximovich, yes. And I read her book, Seeds, my memoir, and I had not read it before. It had been sitting on my shelf for a while. And I couldn't put it down when I read it. So welcome, Sasha, to today's show. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Sasha, the other things I was going to mention is that later on we were going to talk about your books because Sasha also is an author of several books. And an artist, and you also are very much a very generous philanthropist as well. And we'll talk about that later. But Sasha, tell me a little bit about your origin of your childhood and what was life like back then.
So I was born in former Yugoslavia, which now doesn't exist because the Sixth Republic was split apart. So my mom was in prison for 3 years before I was born, and my dad was in prison 9 years. So in a communist country, what you do, you either imprison people to see if you can silence them, or you kill them, or you isolate them. So I think they actually isolated my mother. They put in a little village, and that's when my father, same story, was isolated, and they met, and I was conceived, and he went to prison. My mom was 6 months pregnant, and when we came out, I was 8.5 years old. And so we stayed there. It took us 11 years to get passport to get out. We constantly moved because they knew that we were against the Communist Party. So it would take about 6 months for the file to reach, and they tell you that you're against the regime, and then it just makes your life miserable. For me in school, kids would beat me up, my mother. There was a constant, so we always moved. Right. So after obtaining the passport, we immigrated to Austria. Okay. And we stayed in a not concentration camp, but refugee camp for 1 year. But we couldn't find a place to emigrate. My father never left the country. He was under house arrest for another 12 years, and he died in Yugoslavia. So I was a minor. I needed 2 parents for permission, so we couldn't go anywhere. So they turned us back to the hands of the Communist Party. And we already denounced our citizenship, so they knew that we were against the regime. So they kept us in prison. I was just like 14 for 1 week in prison. And my mom, who always saw amazing positive things no matter what's going on, she said when they interview us, they will give us bread that doesn't have bromide, which is a sedative, and they give us fresh water. So she was always excited. Today they're going to interview us. We can get more bread. And anyhow, they interviewed us, and they let us go after a week because they couldn't keep me. I was a minor. And we had some friends that wanted to take care of me, but they wouldn't take care of my mom. And my mom wanted to commit suicide because she was, with her beliefs, she was so much in my way, my life. And she saw this little church. She's a Greek Orthodox, my mother. And I was, I didn't believe in anything. You believe in yourself. That's what Communist Party tells you. And the leaders, there's nothing higher than that. And she saw a little church, and she went inside, and she asked what it is. It was a Catholic church, and they took us in. And it's interesting. And so we stayed there for 1 year, and we worked all day for one meal a day. And at night, they would project movies, and they would project these movies about this guy, Jesus. And in some places, he has longer hair than others, depending which movie. And then it was Father Damian, which was a Catholic priest that took care of leprosy patient in Molokai in Hawaii. And I decided I want to be a physician, number one. Number two, I wanted to know more about Jesus. And I got baptized. I made my own baptism poster.
Really?
Yeah, I was baptized in my mother, then converted to Catholicism. And then I decided I want to take care of people who no one wants to take care of.
Right.
And so actually I even went to Kenya in 85, and I lived in a leprosarium. But then I realized leprosy is cured. There's no more leprosy. The 300 people who live there are people who are disfigured and have no place to go.
Right.
So I said, well, what am I going to do? What is close to leprosy? No one wants to get leprosy. No one even knows now leprosy, right? But, the old days, they say he's like a leper. People don't even know that expression. Well, you don't want it. It can kill you. It can disfigure you. You can lose different parts of your body. It's like cancer. And I felt cancer was like a modern day leprosy. No one wants it. It's the big C. It's, it's. So I became an oncologist.
Right.
Because of that.
Right. That's wonderful. So going back when y'all were living in this Catholic home, and you convent. And so reading through your book, I mean, your mother basically took charge and knew when it was time for you to move to the next place. Yeah. And so you were always being uprooted and didn't have a place to call home.
Exactly.
And didn't have the ability to make friends because you were never there long enough. And so your mom, how did she decide that she wanted to come to the U.S.?
Well, it wasn't really our decision because we were there, and Padre Rupe, who is the head Jesuit, they call him Black Pope, not because he's skin black, but he wears black, like Pope wears white, he wears black. He's in charge of all the Jesuits. And when he came, he said, well, the mother can stay, but the little girl can't, because they were all priests. And I was a temptation to young priests, according to them. So one of the priests who baptized me, he said, you can go under the Alps. There's a village there. I have 5 sisters, and they're all nuns, and you can stay with them. So then we went to Moistrana, which translates in my site, under the Alps, and we worked there once every day for one meal a day. We were cutting grass and roping it, how you do it for hay. My mother painted a lot of those scenes. And with them, then through Rome, and then in Belgium, all through Caritas Catholica, because we had no one to sponsor us. So we have Catholic organization that kind of moved us, first took us in, then we had to move because of, because I was a little girl and, there were all these young men that moved us, and then we came. So the option was to, when we were in Brussels, when we immigrated, the question was, do we go to America or Canada? And we said America. And then was New York versus Sacramento. We never heard of Sacramento, so we New York. So we landed at 20th September, 1972, Kennedy Airport, 4 o'clock in the morning, my mom's birthday.
Wow.
And my mother said, I'm going to kiss the ground of my new country. It was kind of dirty. The tiles were kind of dirty in Kennedy Airport. She said, let's do this another time.
Yes.
So we stayed in a hotel, Walcott, Lexington and 6th Avenue, where you can rent a room by half an hour. You know what that means. So all the ladies that were there, they were prostitutes. They were my first friends, and they were so nice. I learned a lot of English from them. They were really nice, very nice to me. And we stayed there for, 6 or 8 months. And, they had latrines. They don't even have a regular toilet. You have like a group toilet. It's really, and we didn't even have sheets. We just had a wool blanket.
That's all you could afford.
And so they took us in.
Wow.
They took us in.
So how old were you when you immigrated then?
21.
21, okay. So by then, I mean, you're a young woman, and I'm sure you were very excited to be moving to the United States because this was going to be a new opportunity that you and your mom both would have versus what y'all had been living for so many years in Europe. And so when you landed here, from the book, it seemed like you did not know the language, English.
No. We watched Bonanza every Wednesday. And we went over there that had a television. We had Xeno television, which was a round screen. And people would bring their little chairs and would sit and we watch it. And they would interact with Bonanza. And when they asked, we need a doctor, and someone was hit, the little boy said, the doctor is here, because Dad was behind him and he was a doctor. So the thing I knew in English was, come in, hello, I love you, dollar, hey, we need a doctor.
Yes.
And those are things I knew.
Right.
And suddenly I was faced with, I couldn't even take the right train because our train is pronounced A. Well, A is A, that's like E. So it was very difficult to even just take a train anywhere. I didn't know that, I don't know if you realize that your money, coins don't have any numbers. And do you know that 10 cents is smaller than 5 cents, but it's worth more.
Right.
So when I used to buy a sandwich, this guy always took. I will open my wallet and he will take money, and he always took less because he took the little ones. And I said, always change a line to go to this other guy to get a sandwich. So I decided I am in this country. We need to learn as soon as possible everything about this because this was it. We were staying here. So I watched television, I watched commercials, and I walked around and I spoke like a commercial. There was an Irish Spring soap, and I used to go around, and if someone had a perfume, I said, you smell like Irish boy, or different things, different commercial. I would talk like a commercial.
The commercial said, because that's what you were learning.
But eventually, and I told everyone around me, correct me. And they will and I will pronounce it, and they pronounce it until I got it right. And I said, it may be very cute now, but it's not going to be cute in 10 years.
Right.
So we both really immerse ourselves in everything about America, in everything possible.
Good.
And, when we bought the sheets, I told you the story, I went to get the sheets for the bed because we had this wool blanket. It was all very scratchy. And so I went to the store, and there was this big African-American woman. And I said to her, I need a big, long, white sheet for the bed. And she started laughing, and she had a very big, large breast, and it was shaking like an earthquake. And she said, girl, you have to stretch it. You have to say, sheet. So I'll repeat it. I want a big, long, white sheet. She said, that's enough. And but I didn't know that you had to match it. I never seen colors. Everything in Europe was white. Your underwear, your towels, your sheets, everything's white. So I have a daisy pillowcase, striped sheet, and one color, the bottom sheet. And she was very kind, very kind. Next door, there was a dry cleaning place, and I took something to be clean. And, I usually would tell you a variety of pronunciation of something that I'm trying to tell you, and just meet me halfway. So in Europe, you have to pay deposit halfway before you and the other half you pay when you go pick up the item, so you wouldn't forget it. So I said, do I need deposit, duposit, deposit? Basically I wanted, do I need to leave deposit? Right?
Yes.
And he looked at me, and I could tell immediately he's not going to meet me halfway. He said, you learn English, you come back. And so 2 years later, I'm totally immersed in the culture. And I was in a neighborhood, and I said to him, I will be back. And so I came back, and I went to the store, the dry cleaning store, and people behind me now, there's a line. And I know, just like a commercial, if you want to attract attention, you raise your voice. And I said, well, I have been here 2 years ago. And I came, and I asked if I need to leave deposit, but I couldn't pronounce it correctly. And you told me to come back when I learn English. And I'm here. I'll learn English. And I say, I'm listening to you. And he said, I don't know what to talk about. I said, you have an accent. You came from somewhere. And all these people came from somewhere. And your store is open because of those people. Half of these people walked away. So then I went next door. The lady with the white sheet, she had a big sign going out of business, big sale. I walked in there. There were two white women inside. And I walked in there. I said, you may not remember me. I was here 2 years ago. And she said, white sheet. And the lady said, I said, it's okay. It's an inside joke. It's okay.
Yes.
And she came and gave me a hug. And I said to her, you were so kind to me. She gently laughed at me, but not, she didn't mock me.
Right.
She thought it was cute, but she'd say, it would not be cute later. So she corrected me.
Right.
So I saw things like that people are very accepting when you're different. So it was an interesting time in New York.
So your mom sounded like she was ready just to jump into the culture with you and learn the language and wasn't trying to keep any, heritage rituals or anything going on like that.
Very accepting. She worked for CETA, which is Central Employment Agency of New York City. She in the water department. She didn't speak any English, and she has PhD in economy. She's an economist, and they will show her, and she will do it. She will do it. And actually, her boss just contacted me. This is 1972 was her boss. He just contacted me 3 months ago.
Oh,
he found me.
Okay.
And he has some of my mom's painting, and he wanted to return some and wanted to show me the ones that he kept. So it was wonderful to reconnect. She's a very kind. Every Wednesday she will cook, and they will come to my house. All the people who are, and there were some questionable people. They were, but she was very accepting. She was very strict, but yet very accepting. She had 5 jobs. She had 5 jobs. She was cleaning an office.
Right.
2 hours, a nightclub for an hour, classrooms, appliance stores. She actually even cleaned the sidewalk. She said, I cleaned the street of New York, but it was just a sidewalk in front of the appliance store. But and she always says, we have to do what we have to do, so one day we can do what we want to do.
Because your mom was well educated. And,
she had a PhD, my dad and my mom.
Right. Yeah. And she did not have the ego to say, I can't do that job.
She always said, it's not going to take my diploma away.
Right.
It's not going to take my education. She said, whatever you do, do it well. And she said, you need to work as you may live forever. And you need to behave as you may die tomorrow. She had all these little things that she would say, and it just made so much sense to me. But I firmly so believed in her. And, she became very religious. She believed in God, and she prayed. She became Catholic. She was a Greek Orthodox. It was a little bit different. And she had, a collection of rosaries and little crosses and little medals, and Jude. She loves St. Jude. And she always helped others. We would go to flea markets and garage sale and buy things and then give it to other people.
Wow.
She would get, even my kids were dressed from Goodwill till about 10, 11, until they realized the brand name. And she said, doesn't matter how new it is. Once you wash it, it's used.
Right.
She said, the key thing, you do not buy anything that has to be dry cleaned because it'll cost you more than the item itself. So we never had this thing about who we are. She said, you have to give back. And she worked very hard.
Right. She didn't feel entitled at all. She just did what needed to be done to be able to provide for you and herself. And for y'all to get, get established into this country.
And I'll tell you this. There's a story. This is an interesting story. We were walking. There was a house on a hill. We walked up the steps, wooden steps, because they had a yard sale. And there was this black man and black woman in front of us. And she was all dressed in this, turbans, kind of beautiful African fabric. And he was limping, but they were blocking the steps. We couldn't pass them. My mother tapped him on the shoulder and said, either move or let me pass. He said, move over because I want to pass. I was horrified. And he said, I can't. Go either faster or move. And he said, well, I can't. She said, why? She said, I have a wooden leg.
Yes.
What would most people do? Certainly not what my mother did. She said, let me see it. Oh, my gosh. Let me see it? I said, I know it sounds terrible, but my mom really doesn't mean anything. So he rolled up his leg, his pants, and there was this wooden, literally piece of wood carved, and a shoe was on the bottom. I've never seen anything so primitive. And she said, oh, that's like Captain Hook. He said, that's so primitive. She started laughing. I am dying. And she said to me, and then 2 minutes later, she said, I'm going to get you another leg. She said, I saw on television, there was this veteran, this army guy, and he had a clear plastic leg, and you can see all the joint. And he could swim, and he could run. And I'm saying to myself, she said it. And when my mom says something, it's a done deal. I don't know how we're going to afford getting a leg, right? She said, you come to my house. And then they were buying stuff. And she said, no, don't touch that. Don't touch that. Too expensive. Give this. I'll get you this. They came to our house. We gave them 2 big trash bags of clothes. She had contacted the United Way. They measured him. They measure him.
Yeah.
We paid $2,500 out of our little saving, and the United Way paid another $2,500. We bought him a leg.
Yeah.
He came to the house, got fitted by the leg, and we had tiny little living room, tiny. She said, I want you to run. We couldn't run. There's a small space. He said, well, just walk. He rolled up his leg, pants, and she looked at her. She said, that's nice. We never saw him again. She did things not because to be recognized or get a thank you note for the rest of her life. If there was a need,
she would need it.
Yeah. It was just no other agenda. And the guy couldn't, and I knew when she commented, oh my God, this leg, I knew there was something in her head. And lots of times she thinks very quickly, and then sometimes like, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't talk that fast. But she was an amazing lover of people. Of all kind of people. And, I have a little bit of that too. I talk to everybody. I'm always talking to people. And my family, I always say they have me on a leash because, don't talk to strangers. And finally, my husband said, no, those are not strangers to you, Mom. Those are friends in waiting. Once she meets them, they're going to be her friends. And it's amazing when you start talking to people how much more we have in common.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Even to outside, all of this is just, to make us look different. But inside, if you lose someone, that your pain, it may be just the same. If you lose a child, it will be just like my pain. If you have cancer, the fear and all the things, just another person who may be totally different than you are. So that common denominator is that always make me kept thinking that people, even with my patients, I never said the patients and us, the medical team. I would say it's us. When I had my lumpectomy, I just run up there to get a mammogram because I keep grilling my patient. Oh, you're late. And finally I realized I was late myself. And I said to, I think it was Mrs. Smith, I said, I'll be right back. I said, I cannot force you to get a mammogram time when I have not done mine. So I ran up there, get it done. She's in my clinic. I said, now, did you get your mammogram? She said, no. I said, well, you need to get it done. I just got mine because I was late. And, suddenly it was not normal. But suddenly I was the person that will be sitting in that chair. And I think that is the thing that physicians sometimes ignore, that they feel they're like in a different level when you really are all on the same level.
Right, we are.
And being close to patient, and at times that was very painful because I lost some patient. I remember Cecilia Brownston was my patient. That we put the bell in Rudman Park, and she was not doing very well. And I said, Cecilia, I just can't. I just can't. There's so many people that I've lost lately. She said to me, ask yourself, are you better off knowing me as a friend? She was a friend before, but anyway, are you better off knowing me as a friend than not?
Right.
And the answer was yes. Right. And then I let my bury down. It hurts, but I think it's the people who are part of family, there's a different connection. And that's part of the reason I got out of medicine, became more of a business. People were not spending as much time with patients and knowing their dogs and kids and all of that. I mean, because it was a very different time for me. And I'm happy. When I was at Walter Reed in the Army, At night, sometimes I walk around with old soldier from soldiers' home. They have nobody. I watch John Wayne movies with them, eat green jello with them, with a tongue depressor because I didn't have a spoon.
Right.
Patients were like my family. And
Well, I love the fact that you watched your mom befriend anybody and
yes.
that she taught you to love everyone,
Yeah.
no matter how different they were.
Yeah.
And so she's definitely shaped you, Sasha. I mean, from early on, all you had was your mom.
Yeah.
And so, and then when you decided that you were going to go to medical school, I know that your mom wasn't too happy about that decision.
No, she said, the only person I think that was crying at the graduation, and not because of happiness, is my mom, because she said, my only child and all those secretions. Well, she wanted me to be a PhD, like
Okay.
professor or something. I did go to, was in a graduate school at Howard. I thought it was Harvard. You heard that,
Yes.
right? And that was another thing. Here I'm in a classroom. It's a black school. I have no idea, right? And only two people who are not black is Professor Zimmerman and myself. It's a shade of black, and I have no idea that I'm in black school until the guy asked me out, and I said, no, I turned him down. And he said, why? He said, because I'm black. And I looked at him and said, no. I said, because you have lousy personality. It was just very different, because we have black from Nigeria and Yugoslavia who are like third generations,
Right.
So it's a very different thing. I don't have that same history that Americans have. I just, it's a very different way. But she was not happy that I was a physician.
So, but she eventually came to accept it, and she knew how good of a physician you were before she passed.
Yep. But a lot of her friends, for the longest time, they knew that I worked with people. They thought I was a social worker.
Oh, she wouldn't tell them?
She said, she works with people.
Huh.
She works with people.
I wonder if doctors in Yugoslavia weren't respected, or
No. She just wanted me. She wanted me to be a PhD psychiatrist or not psychiatrist, psychologist. Professor or something. But but I am a good. I learned a lot of good things from my mother. One thing that she was not afraid of anything.
Right. So when y'all were living in New York, did y'all attend the Catholic Church there?
Nope. No, we have. Yes, transiently, and then got married. So then I became like kind of Methodist, Presbyterian, kind of different things, and then back to Baptist,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
back to the Catholic Church and Baptist, and I'll go to two churches. But she had an amazing faith. My mother, amazing faith, and I think that was one of the things that always kind of kept going. I think she had a faith that God had a plan for her, and she was not afraid. A closed door meant nothing to her. She always told me, she said, "No is not an answer. When someone tells you no, she said that means you have to reposition yourself. There's no no."
Right.
And so she never accepted a no. She would just try in a different way. And she always won.
Yes.
Yeah, but amazing spirit.
Right.
And her faith in God and all that. And, when I was baptized, I was already sprinkled before, but then I was baptized before 9/11. I realized there's a different way of looking at religion. There's a more relationship with Jesus, or just believe in a different way. But, and I really was going to Green Acres, and I saw the things very different. My husband joined the church. I didn't join the church with him. He got up and went to the front to join. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm joining the church." I said, "By yourself?" He said, "This is not family affair. This is a personal decision." And my daughter said, "I want to go with Daddy." I said, "No, you're not. You're staying with me. Let Daddy leave his family behind and join the church." I was so upset with that, But I was helping the church. I was doing all this stuff, but I wouldn't join the church. And 9/11 happens.
Okay.
And then I realized it. And I was going to Taiwan to give a lecture. And, no flights were leaving. And then 10 days later, flights were leaving. And then we will continue our trip to China. And there was just something about me. I said, "I'm not getting on that plane without being rebaptized."
Wow.
And so I did. And I asked,
I think I was there the
David
day
Dyke.
you actually got baptized.
You know, I said to me, when you ask them question, who is your Savior? So you can't hear anything what it is. What it is saying.
Right.
I said, can I say? So I scream, kind of, and I jump,
Yeah.
and the water splashes, anything. And so it's interesting. So we go to give my lecture, and then we go to China.
Mm-hmm.
And, every city is, Hong Kong, Shanghai. And then went to Xi'an where they have those terracotta. And the driver and the person who was supposed to be translated, they're late. They're never late. She comes in, she has jeans. Everyone else is dressed like they go into a party. She has jeans. The guy is chewing on a betel nut, which is drug. The van is halfway broken, no seatbelt. My daughter, always tell me, you can't drive without seatbelt. Now we're in China, and there's no seatbelt. We don't need seatbelt in China because she wouldn't. Right. And so I was trying to make conversation with her. We see temples, and I said, temples. I said, so do you go to temples? Do you believe in temples? Do you go? She said, no, Communist Party tells us to believe in ourselves. And then she said to me, but I have a need to believe in something else than that.
Yes.
And I just started crying. I said, it was not even a week after I was baptized. Right. And I'm saying, I'm in God's army. Oh, my gosh. So when people said to me, how was China? The Great Wall. It was amazing. But my experience in China was this woman who actually went to Seattle after that. She had family. And obviously, God has sent her this need to believe in different things. College students. I mean, she was brainwashed since she was little. But totally, there's something that God puts in people's heart. Awakening. Some people said they hear the voice. Some people this. To me, is just this warm feeling. Like, for instance, I went to church today and light up the candles, and I love doing that. I feel, I don't know, there's something symbolically about that. And it just recharged me. It just recharged me. And I know when my patients were dying, and when my mom died, I was devastated because I didn't have that strong faith, because I thought death was very final.
Oh, I see.
And then I realized that it's just, you will see them again one day.
Right.
And when I felt this was a transition, and my patients, I would send them a poem about, the loved one being gone, because it's very hard for people to think they will never see their loved one again. And knowing that that's not the case.
Right. It's not the case.
That's not the case.
If you're a believer in Jesus.
Yeah. And that journey, you have to take it alone.
Right.
And it's hard sometimes. But I have people who have very strong faith. I have one woman who said to family, they're all crying, and said, I'm going home. I'm going home.
Right.
And some of the faith I've seen in my patient, it's incredible.
Yes.
I have learned so much from my nurse, Donna Pancratz, which is amazing.
Yay.
I mean, God has put people in my life.
Yeah.
David Dyke, which I think is amazing.
He is.
All these people that God has put in my life that I realize, and that's where the seeds come from. I wrote a book after my mom died in 1985, and because I talked about her like she's going to show up any minute, I couldn't bury her. I could not say past tense. I was always like, my mom this, my mom that. And one guy said to me, where's your mom? I said, she's in heaven. And he kind of joked about it. He said, is that in Texas? Because, in Texas we have everything. We have New York, Manhattan, we have, Athens, Palestine, we have everything. Yeah. And I said, well, some people think of heaven is in Texas. And he said, you should write a book about it. So I did. And, I call it seeds because really our life is a bunch of seeds that people plant, events. You meet people, and sometimes God puts the person in the right place, the right time, for the right reason, with the right heart. I mean, it's perfect timing.
Yes.
I mean, we could have gone totally different way to come to America. Totally different experience.
Right.
But, you started with Catholic Church. We're not even Catholic. How God kind of directs you path where he wants you to be. And those seeds, I think they're very meaningful. There are people in your life for just for a season, for 1 month. There are people in your life for that they plant seeds that only start growing years later, and you go through stuff and you say, oh, now I know why I have to go through that.
Well, I read in your book, you had mentioned that after you became a believer, you were thinking, I have a bunch of unrelated experiences in my life, like they're just not related to each other.
Yes.
But then when you become a believer, you start seeing the handprint of God guiding you, because those events, they were not unrelated. They were related.
Yes.
He was connecting them. He was connecting the dots. He was moving you to the next place that he wanted you to be.
Yes.
And, the way that you view life, the way that you see others, the way that you experience God is so different when you are in a personal relationship with Jesus.
Yes.
And, your mom passed 1985, you said, and I bet it was very, very hard because at that time you probably didn't think too much about heaven.
Yes.
And you thought, okay, that's the end of my mom. What is my life going to be like? But
I didn't have anybody here. I was by myself. And, I was in the ER, and they gave me 2 days off to get things,
Right.
So there were several things. So when I went back to the ER, the first person who came was a woman same age as my mom, which was really, she was death on arrival, and I could not stop resuscitating her until they peeled me off her. Then when mom died, my money was going to savings and loans, and they had a problem at that time. So my money was getting deposited directly for Army in saving and loans. So I had no money to bury her because they had a problem and you could not withdraw money. So I had to borrow money to bury her. And so it was, and so I went to support groups, you know.
Yeah.
And the first thing they said to me, you have to write a letter, a goodbye letter to your mom. And I'm saying, I'm in the wrong group. I want to talk about my mom. I don't write a letter to my mom. Right. And so that was an ongoing thing. Just I had to keep alive, tell people about it. You see my house. I have all my mom's painting. It's like a mausoleum. It's just constantly I had to, people asking me about it. I did chemo gallery. I put all my mom's painting there.
I know.
So it was kind of sharing her. And the thing is, which was kind of sad, when she said, we'll have to do what we have to do so one day we can do what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And then when we could do what we want to do, she was not there.
Right.
And so, that was the sad part because we struggle a lot. And it's so funny. People say, oh, your life was so hard. And I say, it's crazy because I never felt like I was missing anything.
Right.
It's how you see it. We always have enough. Not abundance, not overwhelming enough, but we had enough.
Right.
We never, the only thing I didn't have in Yugoslavia, I didn't have dry feet. So I promised when I came to America, I'm going to have dry shoes that the water doesn't get in. I always had wet, cold feet. Always wet, cold feet. Oh, and I always had shoes that was so poorly made. And when I came to America, I went to Eddie Bauer's. I asked where the things that they have that waterproof. Mm-hmm. They told me Eddie Bauer's. So I went and I got this Gore-Tex little boots. And I run outside because they said, no, wait, you can't go. I said, I'll be right back. And it was raining. And I went in the puddle and jumped up and down. I said, I'll take them.
You're so
happy.
Still
have them. Yes, because that was my expectation. Wow, that was my American dream to have dry feet. Yeah.
Right.
So, but I got more than that. And so now, my children have faith. My husband have faith. I like to, I like to serve others, and so to be involved, to help others.
Right.
And sometimes you don't have to teach them about the faith. They just see what you do, and they say, why would they do? Because they do it for a reason,
Well, Sasha, your mom was a woman of great faith, and so I am praying, and I know you probably already know that when she became a believer, you knew where your mom was, and you knew that
Such
you
a
would
relief.
see her again.
Yes,
You
such
have
a relief.
eternity
Yes.
to be with her.
Unbelievable relief. And that's why
Yes.
when I was talking about death and dying to my patient, which is sometimes hard, they'll come in, and they have a diagnosis of cancer, they start crying. And I said, why are you crying? I haven't done anything to them. And I said, well, I don't want to die. And I said, you're in the wrong clinic because I don't make people live forever.
Right.
I want to make you live as well as I can in your own shoes. I can't walk in your shoes, but I'm going to make you walk in your own shoes the best I can. But that journey, you're going to have to take it by yourself. And yes, you have terminal illness called life.
Right.
Life
Right.
is not, and if you think that the second half, there's a book of the Buford wrote called Halftime.
Okay.
And the first half is you accomplish everything, and the second half is what's this all about. But I always say the first half is on earth, and the second half is in heaven. And once I tell that patient, they see it so differently. It's just a journey. And I tell you what, I don't know what about cancer patients. I don't know if people are nice. The nice people get cancer, or they get nice after they get cancer. I don't know what it is. But the most selfless people I've ever seen is cancer patient. They share the experience. They're so trying to make other people's journey better by learning through their journey. I just amazing what I've seen taking care of my patients.
Right. And so I know that you present the gospel to patients that are not believers, because I know that is something God puts on your heart because they have limited time. And, I worked at hospice for 3 years. I helped Dr. Beats with inpatient at home place. And I absolutely loved it, Sasha, because I could easily talk about eternity because it was important.
Yes.
And if I felt like, I didn't do that, who would do that?
Yes.
So I did. I had many, many opportunities. I would say most accepted, some did not, but I at least shared who Jesus was, what the Bible says happens to us for those who believe, and it's their choice,
Yes.
And so I know that you had a lot of patients who were believers already, but I'm sure you had patients who weren't. But you still talk about Jesus. You talk about heaven.
Yes, and it's interesting. I remember the day we died, talked about a friend that died, and the wife made a cake, and it was a boat. You remember that? And it was Luke 8 something, and says Jesus was in his boat, and he will get you to the other side. And I tell my patient, if Jesus is in your boat, we'll get you to the other side. But I also tell patients, if you come to my clinic, there's certain things that I want you to do. You're going to have surgery. That's a surgeon job, radiation, chemotherapy is my arena. But I said there's 5 things you have to do. So chemo, radiation, and surgery. But then there's 2 more, exercise and praying. And I said, let me tell you about prayers. And I usually pray for them. I said, I'm going to pray for you. I used to say, can we pray? And one patient, she just moved to Tyler. She said to me, I don't pray. I said, it's okay. You don't have to pray. I will pray for you. Right. So I pray. So I say, let me tell you about the prayers. Why would you not pray? Number 1, you don't need any special equipment. There's no hair loss. There's no nausea, no vomiting. It's cheap. It's inexpensive.
No side effects.
No side effect. No special place that you need. And it works.
Right.
I say, you put yourself on every prayer list that you know. I had one African-American woman, and she had her family. They were like, at 6 o'clock, they all get on the phone, and they pray. And then she has this prayer list, and she told me how many people. And there's actually a study that they did open heart surgery on a group of patients. And one they piped in one room, say, we're praying for you, and people didn't even know it. We're praying for Mr. Smith. People from all over the world are praying. The surgeon didn't know which patient was prayed for, which one was not. Same surgeon, same number of graft, a thoracic surgeon. The person who was prayed for, even by people they don't even know it. We're praying for Mr. Smith. A Baptist church down in Houston. We pray. Those people had a quicker discharge, less complication, and faster recovery.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I prayers are very powerful.
Oh my gosh. So, and I've shared on the show that, 2 years ago I had breast cancer, and Sasha, she was one of the ones who would always text me and go, "Did you do this? Did you do that?" You showed up at my door with anti-nausea stuff, I think, and was always on top. I mean, and I had 4 oncologists, I think, taking care of me at the same time. And so the prayers of the people are so effective, because I'm telling you, I'm cured of the cancer. The breast reconstruction I had 4 months ago, not a day of pain. My incisions healed beautifully, and I owe it all to God, because that is not the norm. Like, literally, I didn't even have to take an Advil
And your
or
surgeon
Tylenol.
is a godly person.
Dr. Teosha.
He's an artist.
Yes.
And what he does, he has a gift.
Yes. And you had recommended him to me as well.
He's
and
amazing.
so yes, the power of prayer is so effective, and God answers. There are times, though, when you do pray and the answer is not what we want, but we pray in accordance with God's will. And your will be done, Lord, no matter what happens to us in this life. You are with me. The word says he never deserts us. And so if we lose our life on this side of heaven, we gain, because we're in heaven with him. To live is for Christ, to die is to gain, Paul says in the Bible. And so I love the fact, I look forward to heaven, and the patients that, I've walked through, I've lost, fathers and mothers and whatever, sisters and brothers, and my patients' families, there is a grief, but those who believe and have the hope of heaven, Sasha, it's different for them, and we all know that one day we will all be sitting together at the banquet table. Your mother, I will be able to meet one day and say, I know.
She'll be greeting you at the door. She'll be right at the gate.
Yes.
She'll be the one that talks a lot.
Yes. And I would recognize her, because now I have her picture.
Yeah.
And so, but the whole fact of the matter is, this is what we were created for, is to know God and to love him and to serve him. And, I didn't become a believer until I was 23. So when I was preparing my time with you and reading your book, because I believe that you found Jesus later in your life as well, I started thinking about all the things in my life prior to me becoming a believer. And I never saw God's hand in my life until I actually became a believer. Then I understood all the things that had happened to me. Not all of them are good, but not all of them are bad.
But led you to where you're at.
For sure. For sure.
There's a song called Thank God for Unanswered Prayers. It's a country song.
Yes.
And, I think that's what kind of separates if you really believe or not. Because you pray and you pray, you pray and pray, and it doesn't happen. And so you either lose faith or you say, God has something better for me. I remember going to a reunion, a medical school, and there was a guy that I had a really big crush on it. Really big crush on him. And then I saw him after 40 years of medical school, and I'm saying, oh, my gosh.
Thank you, Lord.
Yeah. So you kind of look back, because God is just amazing. That the God timing is impeccable.
I know.
And
I know.
He took a long time to get me where I needed to be.
Right.
A long time. Different countries, different cultures, different languages, different people. The reason I'm here because I was in the Army.
Yeah.
I would have never been in Texas.
Right.
I'm from New York. New York, Washington, D.C., San Antonio was the smallest town I lived. And in Rome and Brussels. We're talking about,
Right, exactly. I know.
So 95,000, Tyler, Texas.
Yes.
And I'm meeting Dr. Kimmel and falling in love with the man. I felt like I need to be here.
You knew.
And it's just new. I just knew. That's how we got Boris, because we were here. Everything that happened is happened for a reason.
Right. So, yes, y'all did adopt Boris after you had Maxie.
And because we were in Tyler. You know, I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I remember the Hope for 100. Was
Yes,
that about the
yes,
time when
yes.
y'all had?
And actually, you said you were going to talk about my books. The proceeds from all my books goes. The first $100,000 went for Hope for 100 through the organization that we actually got Boris from Russia, and then the other 285,000 went to well, still is going to exercise program for cancer patient, which is free. Fit steps. And, I love that because, physical therapy is only good while someone is paying for it. The minute payment stops, they say you don't need physical therapy. But we found that exercise program makes people live longer. They're more independent, less depression, less infection, less admission. It's an amazing.
Right.
And we prescribe it just like a medication. You get on a treadmill, 2.5 for 3 minutes. Then, that's elevation. And it's amazing what it can do for you.
Right.
So prayers, exercise, and the rest chemical stuff that you need is what people need to get through.
Right.
And be cured.
So now you're a grandmother.
Yes, I'm loving it.
And Briggs
My name is
how
Joy.
old? Joy.
Yes.
Okay.
My grandmother's name is Joy. My husband said, well, I guess I'm going to be grumpy. So he's grumpy and I'm Joy.
Oh, my gosh, Sasha.
Yeah, but Joy stands Jesus first, other second, then you. And every day I do my Jesus calling and I put on Facebook for a reason because I think I kind of want to dilute what's going on Facebook. And I send it to about 50 people. I text them. And it's Smile in Ministry. And I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And
you and your dogs.
My dog, Jump for Joy. Yeah. We love it. We love
They're
it.
precious.
It's just few little things, lighting candles, doing, working with homeless, working with pantry and be the bread lady. I mean, you can always give so much back. Service is so important to me and my mom. We always help others.
Right.
Because they helped us. We would have never been here if it wasn't for others.
Right. Well, Jesus came to save us as well as serve us.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Because, I knew that you were very active with homeless, the Church Under the Bridge.
Yeah.
In Tyler and
Summits on the Paul. I do that Tuesday and Thursday, and I'm teaching at Caldwell Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Saturday I go to Church Under the Bridge for homeless. So I'm really 6 out of 7. My mom said, medicine is an art. And I said, I know. I did it for 35 years. And then it became a business, and I just couldn't do it. Right. And then she said, but art is medicine. So now I'm doing the second part. Right. I'm doing art is medicine.
Right. So you are an artist because you sculpt.
Yes, I sculpt. My mother painted. That was kind of her therapy.
Yeah.
When she got, she kind of lost her status, who she was. She painted a lot, prolifically painted. And plus, she painted a lot of scenery from my country, from our country. And I couldn't do flat surfaces. She'd convinced me I couldn't do flat surfaces, so I sculpted. So I did sculpture in the 60s for UNICEF and Oxfam, which is a children organization, and people bought them.
Wow.
It was an auction things. People give money anyway. So I said, well, maybe, they said, well, you're pretty good. So I started doing it. I have several things in All Saints in the school there, several things.
Right.
We're giving one piece for sex trafficking and auction, different things. So, yeah.
Interesting. So do your kids in your art class, do they listen to you?
Yes, and let me tell you, they introduced me. Oh, they love me. They introduced me as a physician, a retired physician. That's how they introduced. So this little girl, this is like kindergarten, and then first grader. And she said, "What is physician?" She said, "She's a doctor." And she said, "What kind of doctor?" She said, "She's a cancer doctor." And then this little black boy, his name was King. He said, "But what kind of cancer doctor? Do you do surgery?" I said, "No." He's like a first grader. No. So he said, "Do you do radiation?" No. He said, "What do you do?" I said, "I give chemotherapy." And he said, "Oh." And I guess there was a black man who died in his 40s. It was a actor who had a colon cancer it was a movie about Black Panther or something. Black Panther. Okay. Yeah. And so I have no idea. He said to me, he said his name. He said, "Did you have people like him?" I said, so my teacher said, he had colon cancer. I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "I have." He said, "How did they do?" I said, "Some did okay, some didn't." He said, "That's what I thought." couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And then when she said I was a physician, didn't face them, but she said, and she's also an artist. And I said, oh, they asked me how old I was, And she said, well, you don't ask people how old they are. And I said, no, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
And one kid, I said, I was 69, and I said, no, she looks like a teenager. So just so cute.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you enjoy teaching the kindergartners, and because I bet you have fun with them.
When I go to somewhere, people say, oh, you took care of my grandmother. Larry said, I knew she arrived. She said, this little redheaded girl, she ran. This is my teacher. Larry said, oh my gosh, I have more recognition now in the community because of my students,
Right.
Yeah, really liked it a lot.
That is crazy, Sasha. So, well, tell us about your books. I know you've written 3 books at least.
So the first one was The Seeds, which was a memoir, which kind of has some pictures in the middle, which is interesting, talks about my journey. And the cover is my mom's painting. The second was Weeds Among... then I've written Seeds from My Patient. And it's interesting. I've not changed anyone's name in the book, so these are really patients. And I looked to see it's almost like a recipe to be a survivor, because you can have a stage 2 patient and stage 2 patient. She does well, she doesn't do. Why? Well, they are the variable. But, I found out a lot of these survivors have something in common. And one is they believe they believe that they're gonna survive. They believe that they're gonna do better. They pray.
Right.
So there's kind of really traits in there that people have who are survivors. Yes.
Right.
And I use a patient to symbolically represent each one of those traits. But of course, there are people who can be in many of those chapters. And I use the real names. And the cover of the book is me running the race for the cure with one of my patients, which I usually do every year. And that year I was working, so I was in my scrubs, and the newspaper took it. So it was kind of symbolically represent that every patient has their own journey, the beginning and the end.
Correct.
And I'm there to help them get to that end. And then the third one, I went through some depression because of not knowing what I'm going to do next, medicine changing. I was not happy the way things are developing. Yeah. It's called Weeds Among Seeds. And weeds, also has my mom's painting on it. Weeds is undesirable things. No one wants weeds in the yard.
Right.
Weeds is like cancer. Weeds is like depression. Weeds is the divorce. Weeds is the death of your child. Weeds is a bad car accident. But then, if God creates everything, God can create the weeds too. So I think weeds have a purpose. I think we learn from weeds. It makes us appreciate the seeds. I remember when I was in Singapore, I was walking around. There was this woman with this exotic flower garden, amazing. She had a big white hat, Asian woman. And she was picking weeds. She was picking. I said, excuse me, ma'am. She said, She never looked at me. I said, your yard is spectacular. She said, thank you. She's continuing to chip. And I said, but seriously, there's really I know. And finally I said, ma'am, have you ever looked at your garden? And she stopped what she was doing. She said, I have to do all this stuff like this to make it look like this. And I say, sometimes we do that in life. We get focused on little piddler thing. A husband who doesn't put his shoes in the rain, or the son that doesn't do tiny little piddly things, and not seeing the big picture.
Right.
And I say, sometimes that's what happens with weeds. So I've wrote a lot about homeless people in my book, and I kept their names. And there's a blue-eyed John in there, and I think he's on page 83 because I did a book signing under the bridge, and I gave the books to the homeless people, and he will go around and say, "Blue-eyed John, page 83. I'm in blue. I'm in my book. I'm in the book," and it was so sweet to see them that someone wrote about them and made them feel
like.
So that was good. So I have another fourth one, which is a collection of all my mom's paintings called Living Life in Color, which is this collection of, because she gave in art. My mother said, art is not for sale. We'll give it away. We don't sell art. So she gave to so many that I didn't have any records of it. Right. So we had the museum to come and catalog, and then some people sent me pictures of the paintings they had.
Right.
So that's kind of has
Oh, good.
things. So yeah, I give paintings to people that I think my mother would have liked.
Wow. Wow. Do you
So
have a title of the book yet?
yeah, that's called Living Life in Color.
Living Life in Color. Very good. So
Uh,
I'm sure that will not be your last book. So
yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe I'll write about my grandson. I don't know.
Briggs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the grandchildren or something. I'm gonna have another grandchild.
Yes, you
A
told
little girl.
me. I
Her name is
know.
Grace, like
It's
yours.
I know. It's absolutely
I love
amazing.
Grace.
So
We're gonna call her Gracie when she's
okay,
little.
good. Well, I'm glad they're going to have lots of children because
Yes.
you and Larry need to have your quiver full.
Yes.
And I mean, children are a blessing from the Lord, you know, and I hear grandchildren are so much better, you know, than
Yeah.
our children when we were raising our children. But anyhow, well, Sasha, thank you so much. Your
You're very
story
welcome.
is so inspiring. I really feel like it's going to encourage people who have come through very meager beginnings, humble beginnings. You didn't know a lick of English, poor, didn't have a home. And just how God, even though you may not have realized it was Him, how He was still guiding and protecting you and moving you to where you needed to be to get to what He wanted for you to do in your life, and your mother, a strong woman of faith. Oh my gosh. And I know you dearly miss her, but it's not going to be long. And her spirit, actually, Sasha, is so much more present, I think, when people pass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No question.
And
The people who tell me, oh, I wish I would have known your mom. She said, but I feel like I know her because I talk about her a lot.
yes.
Yeah, but it's just really amazing. My mother was, I think in the book we said, when you look at the star, or you look at the dark sky, she sees the stars. She never, I don't know how and I so blindly believe her. I mean, I never questioned when she said, it's going to be fine.
Yes.
It was going to be fine. And I think inside she had a really strong faith. And then she really, the reason she liked the Catholic Church, she's very visual. So she liked the paintings, the icons, all that thing that you can touch, the crosses and all that.
Right.
She loved that because she could relate to it. But she was such a loving person, loved the Lord, loved the people. She would have loved to be a great-grandmother for sure.
Yeah, I know.
But can I say something else? And you don't have to record this, but can I say?
Yeah.
I met you many years ago, and I've shared patients with you. And there was so much, you and your husband have done so much for this community.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing things. How many people you have helped. I went to Israel, and I saw the well, Bethesda well.
I know.
Yeah, which I didn't know there was such a thing, And it's interesting, the guy in this church, it was right outside the church, was a black man, and we actually sang that church, and the echo was unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
We were with David Dyke. And I said to him, he was from Africa. And I said, well, I lived in Africa. I was in Busia, which is the leprosarium near Nairobi.
Yeah.
Well, it's near Kisumu. It's about 8 hours from Nairobi, anyhow. And I said, I was in Kenya. I say, in a little village where's leprosarium. He said, I am from that village.
Wow.
In Israel.
Crazy. Yeah.
In the church.
Right.
I would say, like,
you just looked at him. He didn't have leprosy anymore.
Yeah, well, he was just living. He never had leprosy.
Okay.
He was just living there. But, I mean, he just comes from it. Not everyone has leprosy there. But, I mean, he was from the same village that I lived.
World.
I mean, like, hello. I mean, it was incredible. So, anyhow, but I want to thank you for doing this. This is so good. And you're finding people in this community that a lot of people don't know how they believe or what they believe. And I think that's great.
Right.
I listened to some of your podcasts. It's really very nicely done.
Thank you.
So
I
it's a lot of
appreciate
work.
that.
I know you send all this questionnaire stuff. I mean, you have really analyzed this thing. I'm like...
Well, Sasha, the Lord just puts it on my heart that we need to get these Jesus stories out there. And you don't have to be a famous person to
Yes, exactly.
have great Jesus stories, And so, and there's so many different things in this world that we struggle with that need to be talked about. And so my heart's very passionate about the cultural issues, the LGBTQ, the life issue, but there's also the common day issues where anxiety, depression, broken relationships, healing past wounds, suicides. I mean, we live in a broken world, but the whole point of it is just inviting Jesus into our pain, into our struggle, and asking him to help us, and he will. And these stories that I've interviewed with my guests, they just so encourage me, and I just love watching God at work in other people's lives. And so I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank
and I
you.
know we could talk forever because you have a lot of stories, but anyhow, so people can get a hold of you on Instagram, Facebook, and they can get your books on Amazon.
Yes.
Thank you for being on the show. And I want to thank our listeners that have popped into today's episode of Getting Real to Heal with Dr. Grace. And I will see you the next time. Bye now. Thank you to today's show sponsor, Express Employment Professionals. They are the leading staffing agency in East Texas, and they have helped thousands of businesses and companies find the right employees. If you are somebody that's looking for a job, Express Employment Professionals can also help you. Go to expresspros.com. That is expresspros.com. If you liked what you heard today and you want these Jesus stories to go out into the world, please consider giving to deepintheheartministries.com. You can also get a hold of me at grace@drgraceenglish.com.